today's speaker is Patrick O'Malley, social... You have a fan club, Patrick. Social media consultant. Pat loves and lives social media and can show you how it is changing the future of business for the better. He also knows it can be a waste of time, so he focuses on how you can utilize your time effectively. Some career highlights for Pat. He was a first-place winner in the 2012 National Speakers Association International Professional Speaking Competition. He pitched 5 scoreless innings at the first-place Cubs in Little League. He was vice president of operations for the search engine that was Google's top competitor 10 years ago. How'd that work out for you? And a fun fact about Patrick, his phone number is actually 617-PATRICK, which he thinks is pretty cool. So please welcome Patrick O'Malley.
Fast start. Before I tell you what I'm going to tell you, which is usually the way you start a speech, we're starting out like the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where we're going to jump into something right away. LinkedIn changes to profiles. I'm sure it's been rolled out to almost everybody now. Has everybody gotten the new LinkedIn? Okay. Few good things about it, mostly a lot of bad things about it. And they've gotten a lot of backlash as a result, and they deserve the backlash, and they know it, and we're going to talk about some of it. We'll talk about some of the implications for you. One is that your picture is now round. Like, why would you do this? I have no idea. And actually, internally, it's kept square, as you're going to see, believe it or not, in a demo I'm going to do a little while from now. But your picture's been made round. You have to look at this, because depending on how your picture was taken, if you have one of these pictures that most people have, which is a professional portrait and you're right in the middle, that's fine. But if you have one like mine, which is a semi-action shot, you have to make sure that it still looks right. So make sure you check that. Next, the professional headline is right here, as it's always been. If I could give you one major tip as a LinkedIn user when you start, change your professional headline. Your professional headline should not be title at company, which is what LinkedIn would make it. How many people have the professional headline title at company? Change it. Your professional headline can be something like 12 to 15 words, and what it should be is 12 to 15 words that describes you well. And I could spend 10 to 15 minutes talking about this, but if I worked for Insight, and Insight is voted best place to work, I'd have that as a part of my professional headline, because if people see that they're working with somebody at a company, and the company is one of those best places to work, they're going to think that they're dealing with somebody who's in a good mood, who's going to be easy to work with, etc. It's probably a good company, right? So that's something to consider. Here's a big one, believe it or not. Right here, these 2 lines are the first 2 lines of your summary. And that's a major change. It ends up being about 30 words. And the way I think you should think of it is that this is 12 to 15 words that is a marketing slogan for you. And this is another 30 that describes it in more detail. By the way, any of this stuff you can change as often as you like. I'm not saying you should change it every week or every month, but it's not a bad idea to change it every so often. For instance, if you work for a bank, and you're trying to develop business in Waltham, not a bad idea to have something here or here. Say that you're developing a business in Waltham. And then if you're supposed to develop more in Weston, you can change that. Okay, take a look at my first 2 lines. It says, my only desire in life is to help companies that attend SBANE meetings in Waltham in April, including friends from Providence, Melissa Travis, and then I live and love LinkedIn, blah, 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 blah. So you can change it as often as you want, and I'll be changing this before tomorrow. All right? But no reason why you can't change these things periodically. If you're going to a meeting, if you're going to a conference where you focus on one particular part of your business, not a bad idea to change some of this stuff to reflect that, even just for the week of the conference, and then change it afterwards. Okay, so again, the picture, then these 2 lines, And then if you click see more, you get to see the person's whole summary field. You may want to check out my summary as an example. Don't give it the wall of words. Have you heard the phrase the wall of words? The person that has one of those paragraphs that goes on and on and on. How many people have read one of those in the last 10 years? You just don't, right? People who read stuff like this want to skim and scan. Okay? So it's a good idea to have bulleted headlines or capitalized paragraphs and then bulleted items so that the stuff can be scanned easily, which is what I've done here. Here's a good example. Susan Barber, who didn't even do it on purpose, if you take a look at the first two lines that she has in her summary field, they look great. Now, as a bad example, does anybody know who Coca Sexton is? Coca Sexton was the top social selling guy in all of LinkedIn. He ran the whole department, okay? And he's a friend of mine because I speak at conferences with him. His is terrible. And the reason is he hasn't looked at it since they made the changes, and some of the letters run into some of the other letters because when you put things on a few different lines in your summary field, LinkedIn blends them together. So he's got a quote from The Alchemisti am honored to be one, and it makes no sense. It's supposed to say the alchemist carriage return, and then I am honored, blah, blah, blah. Here's what it all boils down to. Whatever you do here is going to be the first thing that somebody sees if they look at your profile. So look at it to see what they see and make sure it reflects what you want them to see. Also, check to see what it looks like on a phone. Because a lot of people, like if they're coming to a meeting like this, might be checking out your LinkedIn profile on a phone. So, picture circular, change the first two lines of your summary field, and then see how they look on the desktop and mobile. If there's anything that you consider particularly interesting when I'm talking about stuff like this, in the upper right-hand corner of every one of these slides, there'll be a slide number. Okay? And that'll be consistent in the handout that I make available to you at the end. How many people here know how to spell their last name? Seriously? 1. Good. 2. 3. Oh, no wonder you get the name Insight in this neighborhood. Okay? The only person who knows how to spell their last name. Here's the thing. Does everybody else know how to spell your last name? How many people know Mark Manuel? Everybody, right? Do you know how to spell his name? It could easily be M-A-R-C, but it's M-A-R-K. It could be M-A-N-U-A-L. It's E-L. Okay? Here's the thing. People who meet him, or meet me, and then decide, all right, I'm going to send him a LinkedIn connection, may not be able to find him if they spell the person's name right, spell the person's name wrong. All right? For instance, my last name is O'Malley, O''M-A-L-L-E-Y. A lot of people who spell it don't put in the apostrophe or don't put in the E. Some people don't put in one of the L's. I have all of those misspellings in my LinkedIn profile. So for instance, a friend of mine from college just got in touch with me, okay, Brian Horgan, who I haven't seen since I was at University of Massachusetts. Brian Horgan got in touch with me through LinkedIn. All right, now, I haven't seen him in a long time. I can't imagine he remembers how to spell my last name. Okay? So, if he spells it wrong 6 different ways, he can still get to me because I put the misspellings of my name in my LinkedIn profile. Now, on page 9, I show you exactly how to do it. On the next page, page 10, I show you how I put the misspellings in there. So if he went looking for Patrick, O-M-A-L-E-Y, just one L, that's one of the misspellings that I have. LinkedIn would see the match, and it's more likely to show my profile than any of the other 209 Patrick O'Malleys, because there are 209 Patrick O'Malleys, or at least there were the last time I checked, on LinkedIn. All right? Now, this could actually dovetail into a much larger discussion of what are the other misspellings that people might have when they look for you. Misspellings for the name of your company, misspellings for the name of your college, or multiple spellings for the name of your college. For instance, I went to University of Massachusetts, okay? It's also called UMass. All right, I went to Cornell also, which is simpler. You almost can't get that one wrong, okay? But other schools use different names. Make sure you have all of them in there. Next, profile tip. Put titles you don't have into your profile, which makes no sense, right? but I'm a search engine guy. And if your title is salesman, what is it that other people call you? Right? How many people here are salespeople? What are your titles? Yell out some of them.
Business development.
Business development person. What else?
Relationship manager.
Relationship manager. Account executive. Salesperson? Okay. I've got a few of them here. Salesperson, sales consultant, sales rep, sales representative, which are two different things. Account executive, business development manager, there were a whole bunch of them. Relationship manager. Different companies have different names for different people. There are some companies, and you know some of them probably, where somebody is called a chief evangelist. Right? It means nothing to most of the world because nobody who is searching for someone from that company is looking for a chief evangelist. If they're looking for a salesman from your company and you're called a business development person, you better make sure you have all of these in case they're looking for a sales rep from your company or a sales rep that sells computer hardware. You want to make sure that you show up in the searches, so make sure that you put those things into your profile. I suggest you put them down in the job description for your current job. And you can even explain exactly what you're doing, saying synonyms for my title include these things. Want to hear a joke? What's 5 plus 5? 6 plus 4. You don't know your last names and you don't know what 5 plus 5 and 6 plus 4 are? 7 plus 3. 8 plus 2. 1 plus 9. What's an aluminum can made of? Aluminum. Not tin. Okay, we'll try to wake you up. All right, here's the delayed introduction. I want to thank Mark Manuel. Round of applause for Mark Manuel. Round of applause for Susan Barber. They were the two that brought me in. They had a change of heart. They scheduled a snowstorm to try to cancel it, and then decided that they'd have to postpone until now. Okay, again, if you want a copy of the handouts, I'll be giving out a sheet of paper. You can put down your email address, and I can get you a copy of this handout. All right, these are some of the things that we're going to discuss. We'll see how many we have time to get into. All right, my bio. I do speeches and consulting on stuff like this on social media, Google ranking, sales training, business consulting. I also won that National Speakers Association competition a few years ago. I was vice president of operations for Northern Light, search engine that was tied with Google for best search engine in the year 2002. How many people heard of Northern Light? 8. That's why we went out of business. You were the only 8. Okay? Otherwise, there's a guy at Google with my exact job. Okay? It was worth $65 million today. I know, because I checked today. Like I check every other day. $65 million. All right. I do not work for any of these companies. Okay, let's talk about some of the changes to LinkedIn search, and they're ugly. Here's one. When you go to LinkedIn and you want to do an advanced search, there's no way to do advanced search anymore, right? Here's what you have to do. And it's so non-intuitive. You have to click here. When you click here, it gives you the names of the people you recently searched for. Then it says, search for people with filters. What a dumb way of doing it. I think if you click on that, which I do, this is what should show up. Okay? Guy with a filter. Okay? Instead, it will show you all of the matches. By the way, I'm connected to Conan O'Brien. Anybody else connected to Conan O'Brien? About 40,000 people. He connects to everybody. I assume it's not him, but it looks cool at the top of my list. So, all right. Over on the right-hand side shows the filters, and some of them have been taken away, and it's ugly. Okay? Here's one thing. You can't just search for random keywords anymore. Remember you used to be able to do that? Now you can only look for keywords that are in fields like first name, last name, title, etc. That's ugly. Next, you can't do location by zip code. That's ugly. And you have to then know what LinkedIn calls a geographical area. Anybody here know where Concord, New Hampshire is? Okay. It's in the greater Boston area, believe it or not. Yes. Yes, I don't get. Nobody who's ever been to the greater Boston area thinks Concord, New Hampshire is in the greater Boston area. Okay, but that's the way they've set it up in LinkedIn now. It's ugly, which means if you go looking for anything in New Hampshire, it doesn't show up in LinkedIn. Pretty insulting if you come from New Hampshire. New Hampshire's a pretty cool place for somewhere in the greater Boston area. Industries show up, but again, there are probably 150 of them. I actually have them listed on my webpage, and I'm going to show you where I have them listed. Unfortunately, they only show you a handful, and this has always been a problem. I'm going to give you the page number where I have it on my page in case you need to see it. Here's another tip. When you do LinkedIn networking, good idea to network with your alma mater, whatever it might be. If you went to 2 schools like I did, okay, you can network at both. Not that that was the design going in, but you can do that. All right, so location by zip code is now an upgrade. You have to pay, and if you want to get LinkedIn Navigator, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, it's $80 a month. Like, they didn't even do this semi-painlessly. I paid the $25 a month that I was grandfathered into from previously, because I'd been on that plan for years. $80 is a big step up, and I can't search by zip code, which is pretty annoying, because it used to be cool if you were going to Chicago to be able to search within 5 miles of Chicago, see if there were other people that you could make plans with somehow or network with. So I think this is annoying. Like I said, Concord, New Hampshire is greater Boston. Another profile tip that I think makes a lot of sense today. If you serve Concord, New Hampshire, if they're part of your territory, whatever your territory is, put Concord, New Hampshire in the description of your job. Say, servicing Concord, New Hampshire, blah, 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 and all the other places you service. Then hope that some people, when they're doing a search for something and they don't get into the advanced search and they go looking for Concord, New Hampshire, and nobody has Concord, New Hampshire listed in their profile but you. Maybe you're the only one that gets found. Okay, like I said, the LinkedIn industry list I have on my webpage. Another search tip from LinkedIn. LinkedIn doesn't know, and it's the only thing in the world that doesn't know, that CEO and Chief Executive Officer are the same thing. At one point in history, it did. I'm a search guy, so this is one of the things that I checked. And at one point in history, it did, and it no longer does, because I ran the tests this week, and here are the numbers. For the exact same search, CEO, Chief Executive Officer, and then Chief Executive Officer within quotes, 22,000 matches, 2,300, and then 1852. All right? I think that's a bad idea, but that's the way that it works now. Which means, if you're searching for a chief financial officer because you want to get some accounting work, if you're looking for a chief financial officer, you have to look for CFO, chief financial officer, maybe chief financial officer within quotes. You also have to look for VP of Finance, Vice President of Finance, Comptroller, whatever other titles you think they might have. So it's a much more complicated search than you might think, and it might be more complicated than you might have been doing. You might be missing people just by not having done this before. We do a lot of these. What did the fish say when it swam into the wall? Damn. It's quick, but it's not bad. All right. Realize that when you do a search on LinkedIn, it only shows you people that are in your network or your extended network, right? Did you know you could see everybody by doing a search through Google? How many people do that? I'm surprised, okay? 10 or 15, it's usually not that high. You can do a search through almost all of LinkedIn's database. You can't do searches of people that don't have completed profiles or to people that say they don't want to be seen by the outside world. But if you really wanted to see all of the chief executive officers and CEOs in Boston, even the ones that you had no connection to whatsoever, here are the incantations that you have to put together. You do a Google search and you say, site www.linkedin.com, which is the LinkedIn website, /IN. That's where the LinkedIn profiles are kept. Then you put in the keywords that you want. Chief Executive Officer, Boston. If I do that, this is what I see. All LinkedIn people, all from that site. And by the way, there are 92,000 of them. Why? Because Google is doing the search, and Google is going to match anybody that's got Boston anywhere or Chief Executive Officer anywhere. So you probably want to put a plus sign before both of those. You may want to make a note of that. And then slide 28. Put a plus sign, and then it has to go looking for those words on each page. That way you would definitely get someone who has Chief Executive Officer and Boston on the same page. But there might be somebody there who used to be a Chief Executive Officer and isn't anymore because they work for United. Bad week for that guy. Or it could be that somebody is an executive assistant for a chief executive officer, in which case this string would show up in their profile, but they aren't actually the chief executive officer. Bottom line is, you can do a more comprehensive search by doing this. How many people have done this kind of search before? Good, so that's new for a lot of people. Good. Okay, Brain Reviver, what does this say? What do you do when you come to a green light? Stop. You go. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of them wrong. Coffee hasn't kicked in yet. Should have had some before you came here. Okay. Here's a tip. Look at maybe one of my clients, $150,000, and I'm going to do a quick version of it. As a matter of fact, the company is WGA Insurance. Is anybody familiar with them? They're pretty big in Connecticut and in southern New England. Okay, they made at least 6 deals in 4 months at a minimum of $25K per deal. So at least $150,000 in revenue on this one tip. They had been using the following sales technique. Their sales reps would call lists of CFOs. That's what they would do. But they were just cold calling. What I told them instead was to do an advanced search for CFO and then look at the second level connections. Now, the second level connections are someone you know through somebody else. And I said, call them. When you call them, drop the name of the person that you have in common and ask for 3 minutes. All right? A lot of people will give you 3 minutes on the phone if you limit it to that. And insurance is one of those kinds of businesses where somebody typically has an insurance person or they don't. In other words, in less than 3 minutes, they could tell you whether or not they're a legitimate prospect. Okay? But if they have somebody and that person screws up, they're going to look for somebody else quick, right? That's just the way insurance works. So if you can get a first level connection with them, maybe you get that call. All right? So they started doing this. They started developing a larger and larger network. By the way, every time they add someone as a first level connection, they get more CFOs that are second level connections. All right? And over time, they actually did the tracking, and this is what ended up happening. So it opens a lot of new doors. Another LinkedIn tip. Before you contact anyone, either call them or go to a meeting with them, I suggest you check LinkedIn for info, and here's an example. I was looking for a contract. This is 10 years ago. I was looking for a contract, and I went in, and the company's called Enernoc, and I looked at the people that I was going to meet. One of them was a guy named Tom Atkinson. All right? He went to Cornell. I went to Cornell. All right? Now, I only went for 2 years, and not because I was smart enough to finish everything. Okay? I went for 2 years, and after 2 years, I heard one of those voices that said, Pat, face it, you don't belong in chemical engineering. It was the voice of the dean. And so I had to make a change. I explained this to him. He didn't seem to mind. All right? Bottom line is that I had a connection with him, though, because I at least knew all the bars in town. All right? So we had something to talk about. Now, if I go in for that interview and I don't know where he went to college and can't talk about that, versus I do know that, makes a massive difference. Okay, guy calls me yesterday, and his name is Dave Reinhardt. Okay, he owns a national limo company. And I look at his profile. He went to UMass. I also went to UMass. All right, so I could talk to him about UMass. I also took a look at his activity. So in the conversation that I was having with him, I could say, hey, you could benefit from some of the stuff that I do because I will show you how you can leverage some of those clients that you have. For instance, Salesforce is one of his clients, and he's got a few other big-name clients. All right? And I showed how he could use those clients to maybe get other clients using LinkedIn, using search techniques he hasn't thought about yet. Also, I saw he had a post from Mark Wahlberg, so I could talk about all this stuff And it shows that I know a fair amount about his business, even though it only took me 5 or 10 minutes of research on LinkedIn. So anytime before you see somebody, do some research. And one of the things you ought to really look at is any activity that person has had on LinkedIn. In other words, have they posted anything? Have they liked anything? And this is pretty easy to see. And also, if they have Twitter, look at their Twitter feed. That's a magic tip, because people who use Twitter tend to use it a lot, and it tends to be they're tweeting a lot and nobody's listening. So if you know what they're saying, you tend to know what is on the tip of their tongue. All right? Makes the conversation easier. Okay, so a pat trick of mine, see what I did there? A pat trick of mine is to see if the person has a Twitter account. In the upper right-hand corner, you can check that, and LinkedIn will show you that even if you're not a first-level connection. You can just click into their Twitter account. You don't even have to be on Twitter. You can click into their Twitter account and see the last few things that they said. We're going at a fast pace, so I like the jokes too. What do Winnie the Pooh and Jack the Ripper have in common? The same middle name. All right? These jokes are all done at a 5th grade level, so you can go home and tell them at dinner tonight. All right. Here is my newest, hottest referral technique. It's an original idea, but it's not rocket science. Here's the idea. How many people here have good clients? Better than the last 2 answers, good. And clients that like you. All right, here's what I recommend. Get a video from them. Short video, 15-second video, where they say they like working with you. Then if you have a LinkedIn connection with them, what you can do is to search through the connections that they have and look at the target titles for your prospects. And let me show you an example. Larry Reeves, who runs AAISP. How many people are familiar with AAISP? American Association of Inside Sales Professionals. It is the biggest inside sales organization in the country. Okay? I've spoken for their organization. They usually get somewhere between 500 and 1,000 people at a meeting, high-end executives. And I spoke at a couple of their meetings and got the highest evaluations they'd had. He writes that in my LinkedIn profile. All right? What I can now do is I can go to his profile and I can contact people he knows and I can say, hey, you know Larry Reeves? Here is what he said about me, and it's online. Or you could do this through a video. And I'm more likely to be able to get in touch with any of these people by doing that. I like the video idea a lot better because it's genuine and it's easy to do. You ask somebody to write a recommendation for you, the first thing that they think of is, oh, I don't want to, like, I don't mind saying it, but I don't feel like writing it all down. But if you say, look, you can be done in 15 seconds. Just tell me what you really think. Then all of a sudden you can use that as a foot in the door. So I recommend that you get the testimonial in a 15-second video. Like I said, that's a little easier to get, and it tends to be more convincing. Here's the problem. It used to be that you could search through someone else's connections for free using a search engine. So if you knew that your target prospect was a VP of sales in the Boston area, that was easy to do. So what did LinkedIn do? They took it away and they made it part of their paid LinkedIn. However, if you don't want to pay, there's sort of a sleazy way to do it. They give you a 30-day trial. So if you make an effort to get a few of these recommendations or video recommendations, and then pick a month where you're going to use this technique, it's easy enough to do. Now, you probably won't be getting video recommendations every week, so you might want to cancel before the 30 days is up, and then maybe 4 to 6 months down the road, join again for 1 month and try the same technique. So if you want to do it for, instead of $1,000 a year, maybe $80 times 2 or 3 times a year, you can try this kind of technique much more cheaply. And that's the undocumented part of the tip. Ready for another brain teaser? We'll see. What do cows drink? Cows drink water. There is no number 2 and there is no number 3. Cows drink water. Okay. Let's talk about your network, development of your network. How many people have connected to a fake person on LinkedIn? How many people have received a request from a fake person? How do you even know? I'll tell you one of the ways you can tell is to check the picture. How many people are familiar with reverse Google images? 3 people. Actually, it's usually 5 to 10 in a group of 100. This is going to change your life. Okay? You know that Google has Google Images. Almost everybody knows that, right? You go to Google, you search for pit bull. You click on the image. You don't even see the dog anymore. All you see is the wrapper. Okay? But you see a bunch of pictures of the wrapper pit bull if you go looking for pit bull. What most people don't know is you can drag a picture into Google Images. And Google also knows all the pictures on the internet. And it will tell you, here are the pages where that picture exists. So, I have a LinkedIn request that I left from Phil Biondo. Anybody know Phil? Okay. By the way, I'm using Google Chrome. If I right-click, one of the options is search Google for image. Watch this, exactly. And look at this. It's going to show me all the places where it finds this picture. Well, this LinkedIn page is certainly going to be one of them. You can see all the other pages where his stuff exists, and it looks like it's legitimately Phil. Now, it's not always legitimate, as I will show from an actual example here. I get a request from this woman. Okay? Good-looking woman, not exactly in a business outfit, looks a little bit sketchy, looks a little bit odd, okay? All right. I then take that, drag it into Google Images, and there's another way you can do it too. You can actually drag the picture into the Google Images page, and I do the search, and it's a porn star. So one of 2 things happen. Either somebody took a look at a picture of me and said, this guy looks so desperate that if we just take a picture of any woman and send him that picture, he will probably get connected to us. Then we'll have his email address and we'll spam him with other pictures just like it. Or it was actually her, the porn star, and I don't want to brag, but she wants to do business with me. Okay? I'm just saying. And there's proof online. There's proof online. So, it's one of the 2. You use the technique either way you want. I didn't connect with her, but I'm just saying that's what happened. If you look at slide 49, you can see that Google Images tip in more detail. Isn't LinkedIn a little cooler than you thought it was? The reason it's not as popular as it should be is because it's a bad name. What you're looking for is knowledge and relevant information fast. What they should have named it is prompt access to relevant information containing knowledge. And I think it would have been more popular earlier, but that's just me. All right. A couple more things, because we're going to wrap up in 5 minutes. Is that what this is? The gong's almost coming? Okay. Talk a little bit about YouTube. I think you should use YouTube for those video referrals that you get from people. Capture them in your phone. They don't have to be fancy. 15 seconds in a phone is enough. And then you can upload them to YouTube. And for instance, how many people know who Brian Tracy is? Okay. He's a member of the National Speakers Association too. He saw me in that competition, and I have a video recommendation from him. The cool thing about one person giving another person a video recommendation is those 2 names are so unique together on the internet that that thing, the video or whatever, is probably going to show up near the top in a Google search. So if you go looking for Brian Tracy recommends 617 Patrick, this is my webpage, this is my webpage, and this is the YouTube video. Okay. This also works, by the way, for people who do search engine optimization. It is the fastest way to get ranked highly on Google. And this is a cool example. How many people know what the insurance capital of the United States is? Hartford. Okay. Imagine you sold life insurance in East Hartford and you wanted to advertise. When somebody goes looking for life insurance in East Hartford, they might ask a friend, they might ask their, auto dealer or, whoever they bought the house from. But if they go to Google, what are they probably going to put in Google? Life insurance East Hartford, right? If you look up life insurance in East Hartford, that's a paid ad, that is a map, and these are 3 things that show up on the map. This is me. That's a video that I put there in 2010, and it still ranks #1 organically because I figured out what people were going to ask for, and I put those exact words in the title. There are also 4 other steps that we don't have time for, okay? But do that, and you get a very good chance of ranking highly. By the way, if you play the video, all the video says is, and I was using this as a stunt before a group of insurance people, some of whom were from Connecticut, and the video just says, I don't sell insurance, and I'm not from Connecticut, so why am I here and you're not? All right? Consider doing that for your business, too. All right, what does Twitter stand for? Time wasted in tracking tiny egotistical rants. Okay? For the most part, for most people, it's a waste of time. Believe me, I love Twitter, so I know where it's useful. But for the most part, for most people, it's a waste of time. However, there are a couple of things I wanted you to know about it. #1, it has a search function, and it's location-based. So if you're a bank, we have a bunch of bankers here, right? If you're a bank, and you want to find people who hate their bank within 15 miles of Boston, you can actually do that search and find people who use the word hate and bank within 15 miles of Boston. And go talk to them, because you can do that on Twitter. Hate your bank? Try ours. Come by, blah, blah, blah. Okay, a couple tips I wanted you to know about Facebook. First is Facebook advertising. How many people here are from banks? Okay, one of my clients is Rockland Trust, is a bank. You see them advertising, billboards and on the radio, and I keep saying to them, do you know the demographic advertising you can do on Facebook? Did you know that on Facebook, you can advertise to people based on age, location, but also job title, income, net worth, the car they drive. Facebook knows these things. Basically, because it buys a lot of information and it gets, essentially, if you do anything on a credit card, those companies pass that information around. And here's the funkiest one. If you buy peanut butter, and you use either a debit card or a Stop and Shop card or anything electronic, Facebook will find out about it. Yep. If you're paying cash, they don't know yet. I don't know how they're going to do that. But if you pay with anything electronic, they know about it, and they know about 900 other things. So, if you're a bank and you decide, all right, I want to do some advertising on the radio, but I also want to advertise to 21-year-olds that just graduated college and make at least $50,000 a year because I want them to start at our bank, you can advertise just to them. And it comes up in their Facebook feed. And you don't pay anything unless they click. So, I wanted you to think about that. And if you sell peanut butter, well, all right. Second thing, if you have a Facebook page and you're not getting likes, comments, and shares, Facebook stops showing your posts to the people that follow you. In fact, when you first start, it experiments with you. And it only shows your posts to a handful of people to make sure that you're not just beating them with your business. Because Facebook hates that. They'd rather have you pay for it. All right. There is a ton more to this that we don't have time for, obviously. I have a bunch of things on my website and blog that are useful. Here are the things that we talked about. And it was a lot quick. But I didn't know what you learned or what you knew and what you didn't know. How many people learned at least 5 things? Good. How many learned at least 10? Good. All right. Because with such a disparate group, it was tough to know what to do and what not to do. In conclusion, there's a different type of social media for everybody depending on what your business is and depending on what your audience is and depending on where your audience is. How many people believe relationships are the heart and soul of business? That's going to be true of most B2B people, and LinkedIn is for you. How many people have friends? Facebook is for you. How many people have something to say? Blogging is for you. How many people have something to say but you're too lazy to type more than 140 characters? Twitter is for you. And lastly, how many people just look good? YouTube is for us. Okay? If you're not doing these things, your competitors are going to, so please try some of these things, and I hope you get more business from it. Thank you. Thanks. I follow the LinkedIn blog, the Facebook blog, the Twitter blog. Some of that stuff is advertising, but some of it's useful. I experiment a lot. You know, I come from a search engine background, so I know a lot of the things to look for. And I also look for the common things that people are going to do, you know, every day. So those are some of the things that I look for. I don't, you know, there aren't any particular authors I would recommend, you know, more so than any others, but, you know, those are the ones. Sort of, you know, I go to the source for the company. The magic number that's sort of the consensus of a lot of people is to pick a kind of social media and spend about 20 minutes a day on that. With the exception, if you're going to a meeting, okay, you know, make sure that you do research a little bit on that company, but specifically on the person that you're about to talk to. Because especially, you know, if you're doing any kind of B2B business, if you know a little bit about that person, it facilitates any kind of conversation that you have. But the consensus of most people is, you know, 20 minutes a day. A lot of people do it, you know, over coffee in the morning. So what are the other numbers that other people use? How many people spend more than 20 minutes a day on social media? For work purposes. Okay, how many people spend less than 10 minutes a day? Until you get that one deal is probably what happens. And then once you get that one deal and you say, wow, you know, maybe I ought to spend more. So, other questions? I've been trying to talk Susan into it for a month now. You know, I don't see the problem. And it's not like I look that good on camera. But, you know, I don't know, I suppose if you go to a professional photographer, I would prefer a picture of someone like up against that wall that just looks like them so I can recognize them. I don't think it has to look professional and fancy or you on your best day. I think as long as somebody can recognize you at a meeting and it looks like what you look like, you know, that's enough. So I guess I don't have any particular ideas on how to make camera shy people more comfortable with it. Anytime you're sending a first message to anyone you don't know, the recommendation that I've seen that I sort of agree with is 90 words or less. And I think it should be a lot less than that, you know. If possible, I try to do it in 40 words or less, you know. This is how I think I can benefit you, and can we talk for 5 minutes is usually the kind of message that I will send out first. Is that the kind of message that you're talking about? A first-time contact with somebody? Yeah. Here's the thing. I don't know about the rest of you. If anybody writes something that's more than 100 words, I just, you know, I don't look anymore. I don't think some people don't realize, some salespeople don't realize, 10 years ago, if you sent someone a 150-word email, they might have read it. If you sent someone a 5-minute video, they might have looked at it, okay? In the last 10 years, life has gotten so busy, so noisy, that I don't read any first-time thing that's more than, you know, a handful of words if I don't know the person it came from. And I won't look at a video that's more than a minute or two, even from a lot of people that I know. Right? Like, when was the last time you looked at a 5-minute video from somebody you don't know? Right? So, I would say, yeah, and I really try to economize on words, figure out what do I need to say to this person to say, hey, I can benefit you. Like, if I have a reference from Larry Reeves and I know the person, I'd say, look, we are mutually connected to Larry Reeves. I had the highest rated session at his last AAISP conference. I might be able to help you. Can I get 5 minutes on the phone? That's it. And so I'm in and out in 40 words, and that way I'm not wasting their time. But like I said, you must get some of them too. I get like these, honest to God, screen and a half that you could tell they only edited a handful of things that are related to me, and I'm thinking, not going to read that. Here's something that got cut on the editing floor before I came here. First of all, post stuff that's useful to other people. If all you're posting is stuff about your own company, people tend to care less, okay? But here is the acid test. When you post something on LinkedIn, normally you can't tell if people click through unless you go to your web person, right? I will remember this, and I will put it on the email that I send out with the handout. There is a URL shortener called Bitly. Are you familiar with that? How many people are familiar with Bitly? Oh, really? You want to know something cool you don't know about Bitly? If you post something on LinkedIn and you use Bitly as a link, okay? And at the end, and you put that Bitly link into your URL and hit a return, it shows the article, right? Or the blog entry or whatever. If you put that Bitly link in and put a plus sign after it, it shows you the count of how many people clicked on it. So what I would do if I were you is post different kinds of content and see which ones people are actually clicking on. And to some extent, the ones they like and the ones they make comments on. But to me, that's really the acid test. Other than that, when you make content, people like it better if it's funny, if it's very applicable to them, but that's difficult if you have a widespread audience. It also depends on when you post it. You post, they say the best time to post are early and late in the day, Tuesday and Thursday. But that's sort of generally for everybody because people are busy on Monday and they're trying to get out on Friday, okay? Wednesday is sort of a middle of the week day where a lot of companies schedule a lot of meetings and things like that. So, I'll tell you another one. This is a bizarre one. If you send it out Saturday night at like 3 in the morning, lots of executives only do this kind of stuff from like 6 until 7 or 8 on Sunday mornings before everybody else wakes up. Okay? So those would just be some of the things. I'll tell you, I haven't. And I've done a lot of advertising on LinkedIn. I don't know if you know this, but on LinkedIn, you can advertise to VPs of sales for companies that have more than 1,000 people, that have, blah, blah, and a whole bunch of other things. And I've spent a lot of money in LinkedIn advertising and haven't had that much luck. And I'm surprised, and I'm not sure why not. What was it that you had a lot of luck with? And by the way, for people who don't know, a sponsored update, you essentially say one of your posts shouldn't just be sent to the people that you work with. By the way, you can email them to people, but you can also just say, I want this particular post just to go to CFOs in the Boston area that have companies that are doing more than $20 million a year. And then it shows up in their news feed. And it's pay-per-click, there are multiple choices, but it's pay-per-click. Like, I'm not sure why people click on those things and so few respond, but I don't know.